Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Yakuza, the podcast.
Yeah, it's a brand new year and nothing's changed.
Yeah, not even a
What
save-o.
a fucking shock.
I mean, that's how it always is.
I don't know why everyone gets all excited. It's like, oh no, guys, one random number is going to be changing,
I don't know.
and everyone's like, oh, it's a brand new beginning, and it's like, is it though? I mean,
I actually had
feel
off New Year's Day for once, which was that was the most interesting thing.
I feel like we should defer to the Last Jedi and just kill the past. Fuck it, kill the past. Don't learn from your mistakes, just kill it.
Why don't we just... You know what? You're right. They're right. Let's kill the Last Jedi.
You know what? A year on, that film is still just kind of baffling. I mean, it would be one thing if the film itself was just bad, but there's just so many people who would just defend it against everything. It doesn't matter how many times you point out all of the plot problems, all of the inconsistencies, all the way it breaks established rules in the law, all the ways it mishandles characters. People still go, no, but that's fine. And it's just, I can't understand, why this film in particular has so many people who are just willing to just go ignore everything else just so they can say no, but it's good. I mean, even Solo doesn't have people who defend it to the death. Most because nobody watched Solo.
So, what's I've noticed with with that movie in general is you get that, and then you get the people that also hate it for the wrong reasons. So it's a weird movie in general.
Oh, you mean hate it because it's got the women folk in it?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you should hate the women folk in that movie because they're all hateable, not because they're women.
Because it's poorly... Well, all the characters are just terribly written in that movie.
Rey would be in fucking Mary Sue even if she was a dude.
In that movie, yeah. Because in the first movie... No, because she's doing shit that Luke was doing. The only thing that she got was she got a lightsaber duel rather than shooting a fucking pot shot through a fucking tiny little vent after only flying an X-wing for 5 minutes.
No, but they at least justify that because they have that whole line where he's like, oh, I used to bullseye womp rats in my T-16 back home. So immediately that proves that he's got piloting experience. Rey flies the Millennium Falcon extremely well, and she's never and as far as we're aware, she's never flown a ship before in her life. That's the problem people have, is that while Luke, there's nothing wrong with characters doing extraordinary things, but there kind of needs to be something to build up. The fact that she's telling Han Solo how to build the Millennium Falcon works. And yes, I know it's been modified and that's justification, but it's still that on top of her innate ability to just be a great pilot and her innate ability to beat Kylo Ren in a sword fight.
To be fair, she only won because the guy was being a fucking dumbass.
I mean, that doesn't change the fact she still beat a guy who's had years of training and should have ruffle stomped her.
I mean, okay, I'm gonna use Kenichi for this. Do you remember that one part right after he beat the shit out of a ton of people, where that stupid one note punk comes back for a rematch, and because he's not paying attention, he just sits ruffle stomp by him, and then he just runs away and never appears again?
Yeah.
That. If you fuck around, you're gonna get yourself fucked. That's just in general in a fight.
Yeah, but Kylo didn't fuck around. He was trying to kill her.
He was literally just dicking around. He was just one-handing ha ha ha, this is funny.
It seemed like he was not taking it seriously.
He really did, though. He really wasn't.
Really don't think he was joking around thinking, haha, this is so easy.
He literally was joking around until one point where he starts getting fucked and he's like, oh shit, too. But he'd already taken damage, then he starts actually using the sword, and he gets fucked at that point. Because he was too busy dicking around.
She still wins, with very little ease. She's doing shit, but that's my point, is that nothing she does, she ever has, So at least, Kenichi fucks up, yeah, but, Kenichi does have, you can't say that all of Kenichi's, skills...
Oh, no, Kenichi is not a Sue at all. I was just using that... Oh, yeah, no, he does. Everything. I was just using that one scene, that's it. But...
Whereas...
Rey's whole thing, though, in general, just as a character, is more comparable to Anakin Skywalker, to be honest, with just kind of getting it.
It's the piloting, yeah, sure, I'll agree with, but at least Anakin had a decade of Jedi training before he did justify oh yeah, you can do this shit. It's still not good, but it's still, something. With Rey, it's no, she's just the best. Like, remember, she just accidentally, with no training at all in the Force, just realizes, oh, I can just mind control like Daniel Craig.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like, so she just innately knows how to do that, and that's where the problems come in. Having just one of these like traits that other people. One of these like traits that she does exceedingly well might have been okay. Is the fact that she's a great pilot on top of like having innate power, on top of being like the best Force user ever, because she just knows these tricks that other people spent like were established as taking years to perform.
If I was writing her, what I probably would have done was made her not the one flying the ship. She's interested in it, but doesn't know how to do it yet. Finn flies the ship because the whole Empire thing.
Yeah, but then that's also broken because the whole point of the opening is that Finn needs Poe to pilot the ship because he can't pilot because he's just a useless janitor. I mean, I could also
no. What I would do is I would probably add like a scene of him like watching Poe.
But I mean, there's tons of ways that could have been done. For starters, they should have just not had her be an orphan on a desert planet, because at that point you're already admitting to the audience, yeah, we're not going to have any ambition or try with this. It's going to be exactly what you'd expect. And that's kind of part of the other problem, is that despite what people say, oh, the Last Jedi is so special because it took risks and it broke new ground. Fuck off, did it? It literally just repeats like beat for beat Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Oh no, it doesn't do anything new.
And I hate that.
I enjoyed it, but like I'll never tell you that it did anything new, other than I kind of like some of like I like the dialogue writing better than those older movies, because how do I put it? If the scenes that they cut out of the movie, like the establishing scene with Luke, were left in, it'd be better. But otherwise, they didn't really do a whole lot to characterize.
You mean the scene where like Luke gets to react to the fact his best friend from 30 years ago died? Oh yeah, we cut that scene.
They cut that. They cut the scene of him talking to him before too.
So they cut all the scenes of Luke actually having a chance to be Luke, which then leaves us with
no, I'm talking about the original trilogy.
Oh, because I was talking about
that too. Also, it's fucked. But I was talking about like, you remember the scene where he's just in that they cut from the original version, where he's just kind of sitting there and they're just talking to his friend who's going to the rebellion.
Oh, where he talks with Biggs and Wedge.
Yeah,
or whichever one. Might have been Biggs.
Yeah, that scene. Because that's one of the things that always kind of, like, made it kind of limp-dick the early parts of the original trilogy, is that they kind of just had Luke be there. Han kind of was one note. Honestly, I agree with Harrison that he should have died. That Han should have died in the second movie.
I mean, he only says that because he hates Star Wars.
I mean, yeah, but I agree with him, because, honestly, at that point, Han was just there.
He was still fairly important and doing a lot of fun things, like entire like sort of space chase and Empire Strikes Back puts to shame like basically everything else that's come since.
Well, no, Empire Strikes Back is where he should have died. Like at the end of that movie. Because after that, because like in the Jedi Returns, he's just kind of there.
I mean, he leads the entire like ground team on Endor and helps Chewie does the whole thing of taking out the Empire. So like he's not like doing the Death Star run. That's up to Lando. But
no, I just mean like he just like character development wise, he just feels like he's just there now. He feels like a done character who's just kind of sitting there at this point.
I can see that, but it still doesn't change the fact that there's this whole thing called whataboutism, where in order to defend things, people will say no.
I'm not saying that. I'm talking about just my issues with.
But it's still the kind of same thing, where the issue is the sequel movies have hilarious gaping flaws, and the easiest argument people fall back on is no, but there are these things in the original films. Like people defend Snoke getting killed in The Last Jedi because but
that
you
was
didn't
stupid as hell.
But people say, oh, but you didn't know much about like the Emperor Palpatine and in the original movie. It's like because you didn't actually need to know all that much about Palpatine, because the difference is that the original trilogies are a story in of them are like the beginning of the story essentially, because that's the first one. There's no like, so when the first movie opens up with it's a period of civil war, like the audience doesn't actually have any context for the story beyond that point. So like having elements that are just there for as much as they need to be is fine. Like Palpatine doesn't need a huge amount of backstory because until this point there's there's nothing he's doing. There's nothing he's doing is contradicting anything we know. But the problem comes in when you get to the Force Awakens, and you're.
I was gonna actually promote more of how Palpatine, just using the original trilogy, why he's better than Snoke. So Palpatine is like mentioned kind of in the background a bit in the first movie. So yes. By the way, I'm also looking at these movies in a vacuum this way. So Palpatine, they build him up, and then when you get to the last movie, he does the Force lightning thing, which is something you haven't seen before. So establishing that this man is really powerful, and the reason he dies is because of the betrayal. But there was build up to that. There was build up to the betrayal. There was build up to all this. Snoke just kind of happens.
But as I said, because up until this point of the original trilogy, there is no other real framing device. You don't need you don't need the knowledge or the extra knowledge that the prequels provide to really understand the whole setup. But because
you just know he's the leader of the Empire and that he's really powerful and he's a Sith, that's all you need to know.
But because the sequel movies have that greater context, like you have, the happy ending of Return of the Jedi, then you do kind of need to know, okay, so why is Snoke, the character who was able to do this? How was he able to basically ruin everything? But because you never get that payoff, it just makes that whole, twist, significantly worse.
He didn't really have much build-up other than, oh, this guy looks intimidating.
And look, it's not Sidious. Which can basically be used to describe every new element of The Force Awakens. Hey, look, or quote-unquote new, hey, look, it's not character from previous movie.
He just had, no build-up and then just died. It was... it was you can't even... Yeah, no, it was terrible. It's not... You can't even call it, a bait-and-switch. If he died in the first movie, you could give it a bait-and-switch excuse, but even then it'd be oh, alright, that was stupid and pointless, but alright.
But it still creates the inherent problem of, well, you've introduced this element to a greater story, because because by definition of them being sequels, it's impossible to look at stuff like at The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi without the context of the films that came before it. Because they are made with those films in mind. A New Hope wasn't made with anything else in mind. It was, or maybe the sequels in mind, but certainly not episodes 1 through 3.
Yeah, the sequels, I believe, were because he wanted to be kind of like a Flash Gordon serial sort of thing.
Yeah, so 4 and 5, or 5 and 6, and it's debatable how much of those were
as the ahead of time.
Yeah, but they're still just meant to be with themselves, or sort of the 3 movies are their own thing in that regard.
And honestly, you can say that they didn't really have much plan, because if you look at stuff like the fucking holiday special, they kind of didn't know what they were doing with it. Because remember, holiday special was technically the second Star Wars anything.
There's a lot of conflicting information about how much George Lucas actually had pre-planned, or in development, during Star Wars Episode 4. But and so it's one of those things where you'll probably never know because Lucas will never admit the truth, and everyone else probably has more vested interest to if they could convince people to say, oh no, George Lucas just made this by the seat of his pants. But so as I say, we'll just work on the basis that it's easier to say those 3 movies had the rough idea that they would be a thing. Whereas, as I said, separate alone, that's fine, because you don't need to you need to have enough world building to get people to understand how it works, but you don't need anything really more than that. When you're doing a sequel, you do need more world building, because you kind of need to explain why we've come to this point that we have.
Especially after the Empire was shattered and splintered, you kind of need to explain how this group came to be, what the current political situation of the galaxy is. And they kind of mention things, but then they don't, and it's just kind of...
They don't provide enough explanation for elements, so it becomes the point of, well, why should I care? Because I don't know. Nothing about Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi has any resemblance of the Luke Skywalker as we left him. So it's impossible to realistically care about him, or his or the other things that he does are just kind of so far from what we would expect or know that the whole Jake Skywalker thing is disturbingly true. It doesn't feel like the character that has inspired people for 40 years. It
I
just
like
feels
the movie versions, honestly, of the sequels, not movie, game versions of the sequels, if you will, like the stuff that takes place later, because they did a better job with
the old expanded universe. You mean?
Yeah.
Well, that was because there was a lot more quality control, I would say, in that people were fans of Star Wars, but they still wanted to do their own thing. Whereas since we've got to the new Disney World, we've got people who like Star Wars, or allegedly, because the jury's still out on Ryan Johnson. But you have people who like Star Wars, but are basically told no, but do not take any risks with this billion-dollar franchise that will up until very recently, because they didn't take risks. Because people say, "Oh, but The Last Jedi took risks," and it's like, no, it didn't. As I said, it copied the previous movies beat for beat, story-wise, and then it was like threw in a few twists and turns that was so poorly thought out and ill-conceived that it just wound up damaging the overall product.
They tried. So it's weird. They didn't go full tilt with either trying new things or not. The new things that they did try were just not well like executed or thought out, and everything else was just the same shit.
Like the fact that Finn alone being a former stormtrooper opened up a lot of possibilities.
Like they literally added,
and then they just ignored it.
Yeah. In fact, they even, like, when you think about it, the stupid character Rose was added pretty much just as a bait and switch for the whole, like, Finn-Rey thing. It's like, oh, well, people expect this now. Let's add this new character out of nowhere who's gonna have the dumbest lines. Now, mind you, I always feel like I'm on shaky ground making fun of that character because of like the way people were a shit to the actress. It's like, dude, it's just an actress. Leave her alone. It's not her script.
I mean, I can understand that, but it doesn't. But like, it's part of it's something like it doesn't make it immune to criticism.
Oh no, I don't think that. It's just like I always feel like I have to like interject with just that part. Like, so it's like whenever I make fun of this, like whenever I talk about this movie or make fun of that character, I always feel, because of the way people were acting, I always feel like I have to add that in just because of how shit people were being.
I personally don't think you should do that because it all comes down to the way you carry yourself. As long as you're not addressing her by her real name and talking about the actress, then it should be implied. Then most sensible people should.
The issue is some people don't separate that. That's the thing.
Well, they're idiots.
I mean, like, I'm talking about people that were bitching about it. I'm talking about them.
Yeah,
so it becomes that issue where I have to. It becomes that issue where I have to make sure. Where I'm like, all right, I want to make sure they know I'm separating two different things.
Fuck them. Like, they're idiots. By the fact that they cannot differentiate between that when it's not when it's made fairly, you know. As I said, as long as you're not referring to the person themselves, it should be implied that you're referring to the character if you talk about the character.
I get that, but because of how many people that when they're talking about the character are talking about the actress, it becomes that issue. That's what I'm trying to get at.
I think if they're not smart enough to realize what you're talking about, then they don't not worthy enough of thinking about.
I don't know. I feel like it's a good idea to like make sure that people know what the fuck I'm talking about. But yeah, the whole movie just doesn't really stand on its own. Even on its own, it doesn't really stand. Even if I am to take it on a vacuum, it has a lot of issues.
Well, I'll tell you one of the troubling factors. It's a first draft. Like Ryan Johnson admitted, yeah, we basically wrote the first draft and that was it.
I can honestly, that is super believable. Just from how shaky it is, the dialogue. Like, they had this idea of, like, oh, this is a cool line, and then they just didn't understand.
Just how any of the movies, like, plot is so self-contradictory or falls apart under any kind of scrutiny. Like, it's not a case of people, like, a lot of people will just, I've seen a lot of arguments that are basically just, oh, it's okay that Holdo doesn't tell her plan to her, you know, to as far as we know, the second highest ranking member of the Resistance at this point, who's still, like, functional. It's okay she doesn't explain her plan to him because humans are irrational. And it's like, if your plot is basically having to work on the basis that people are stupid to work, like
someone in that level of authority to be that fucking dumb.
Yes, and like there's never been anyone who's ever been able to actually come up with a justifiable reason as to why, even when there is a gun pointed at her face and they are declaring we are going to mutiny because you do not have a plan and you're going to get us all killed, she still does not tell anyone the plan for no discernible reason. Because it's not like there's any point in the movie where they're like, oh, but there might be a mole on the ship. Like, no one ever says that. And people who say, oh, but that's implied, are wrong, because a film should have that should still have a way to indicate, that actually physically indicates to the audience, so you don't have people who have to write the fucking movie for the writer / director.
Oh yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It would be kind of like, okay, it's gonna be funny to say, because we constantly make fun of how Dragon Ball is poorly written, but it's kind of like if in Dragon Ball, say when they introduced Super Saiyan, if they never mentioned it, and then suddenly Goku just pop, I'm Super Saiyan now.
Yes, but it's like, and I've seen a lot of people say, oh, but there, could have been a mole, and it's like, there could have been, and if the film had have said there might be a mole, and that's why she doesn't trust the guy, it would still be dumb, because hey, he blew up the not Death Star like a day ago, like yesterday, by the film's timeline.
Right.
So yeah, clearly this guy who just destroyed the super weapon that guaranteed the First Order's victory is the mole, obviously.
Not only that, but
But I digress.
You would, yeah, that makes no sense. And if he is the First Order's mole, he's a terrible mole!
But, there's absolutely no point where anyone alleges to the fact that there's any kind of betrayal, that there's any kind of mole. There's no reason why, because they're loading the fucking transport, so I assume the pilots of the transport ships, when, Poe starts his mutiny, know where they're going. So there's no reason for her not to tell him the plan, and the fact that she doesn't directly endangers the entire crew. And there's no justifiable way to have that happen without her just appearing like a lunatic or a moron. And then, as I said, you reach the point of the plot only works because people are so stupid to the point where but it's stupid. You can have stupid decisions can be, irrelevant, but it's all a matter of context as well, right?
Actually, I'm going to use, again, even though Dragon Ball isn't a very well-written show, I'm going to use that. So in the Cell Saga, after Trunks tells him about the androids, Bulma goes, hey, why don't we just use the Dragon Balls and figure out where Zero is and just fucking kill him? And because all the characters are fucking Blood Knights, they don't do that. They literally say, no, I want to fight. And that's because they're just a bunch of idiots that want to fight with people that they think will actually be able to kill them because they're stupid.
Because they never learn.
No, they really don't. But that works in the context of character flaws, making the plot go along. But that's not even a stretch, because this is things that we know about these characters already.
And plus, Dragon Ball is badly written anyway.
Yeah, it is, but in that situation...
No one ever accuses Dragon Ball of being written competently.
Yeah, not even the creator.
And it's not to say that, so it's but meanwhile with people, it's oh, there's no fundamental problems with The Last Jedi, and it's no, there are huge glaring problems with The Last Jedi, and I hate the straw, and there's so much straw manning goes into it, so much of, you just, the whole Ghostbusters thing, you just don't like this movie because you're a sexist, racist bigot, and it's I don't like it because it's crap. I mean, admittedly, I've not seen Ghostbusters, but I will put that down to everything I've seen about the trailer, and everything I've seen since has done nothing to inspire me that this film is worth watching. The best I've ever heard was, it's not as bad as you'd expect, which is not really a ringing endorsement of for something that I had no interest in seeing anyway, because...
So I thought about it, and I'm not sure which one I think is worse. So, for the Star Wars series, in terms of my own ratings for them, okay, here's the goofy thing. So the prequel movies are bad. I'm not even gonna pretend they're good.
Really disagree.
But I enjoy 1 and 3 because they make me laugh.
The difference is the prequel movie.
But that's the thing, though. They make me laugh. Where Clone Wars, I just find fucking boring, and Last Jedi, I just find infuriating.
But I feel nothing the prequel movies really introduce is contradictory. It's not good, but there's no point where it's but no, Why didn't...
Some of the technology is more advanced in the past.
Yeah,
and
but it looks more...
And the force powers are more ridiculous in the past.
The force powers are basically...
Not as ridiculous as would happen later in fucking Last Jedi, but...
You can at least bullshit and explain that the force powers in, like, the original trilogy are hindered by the fact that the only people the only people who can still do it are 2 old men, one of whom is, like, physically... basically quadriplegic.
Yeah, but then we're also doing the work of the writers.
No, but I mean but what I'm getting at is that you have like the point of other people are where you have more people and they're all younger and they all have far more like come together training. So it's not contradictory in that regard. So it's not just like
but we're also doing that same thing you were talking about a second ago doing this. Because we're doing the work of the writers. Because
if you listen, so you have the whole point. They've all got training. You'll see all the Jedi's doing their training. You know, doing the same practice from a young age. And you know that for instance, Anakin has been with Obi-Wan for at least 10 years by the time of Episode 2. So like him doing Force things, like it's still stronger than what Luke was doing. But as I said, you compare the fact that Luke was in training for like 2 days. Or something like that with Yoda, and he got the basic gist of it down, and he wasn't that good, and it took him like doing more like practicing and getting better in like 3 years between 5 and 6, versus like Rey, who's just I get that. I'm just talking about specifically the whole we're doing the work of the writers thing by saying that. I mean, you're right. That would be a good thing, but they don't put that into the story themselves. Because that would make a lot of sense, but they don't do that work. I mean, they kind of do, because Yoda says, like... Yoda repeatedly says, like, to Luke, you know, don't go and fight Vader, your training's not complete, and he's too old, he's not, you know, that. So, like, there's ways they describe...
they imply that, but that's more of, like, implying Luke himself isn't ready, that's it. But they don't show Darth Vader or really even Palpatine doing anything as ridiculous as they do in the prequels.
They explain why Luke can't do any of the things, and Obi-Wan, it's like, well, you saw that sword fight, it's just a sword fight between him and Vader, they're just 2 really old men.
But, like, then if you go to Episode 6, when they show Luke, they show him as if he is a master, though. So it still has that issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, put it this way.
It's still better than what
crazy
the
force
feats?
What force feats are you talking about that weren't like showcased in the original trilogy?
Like the shit where they're just like pushing back like half a platoon with just a force push.
I mean, I can't really say half a platoon. I think I've seen them like push 2-3 guys, which.
They pushed a lot more than that.
I don't think they did, because they pushed. I've seen them push droids.
I remember them knocking down like a whole fucking hallway.
I don't remember a whole hallway because I'd have to rewatch them, but I don't remember any like amazing like feats that were particularly different from the original trilogy that were done by them. I mean, I guess like I'm trying to think of all the like times where it was. I guess because everything else felt like pretty substandard, where they just like push or like they.
There was also the Force super speed that they did in the first movie.
Oh well, I mean, that just looks like a very crap effect. You mean
it was
like vanish when the droids are coming at them. That one just looked like a really bad digital effect, and they never like comment on it and they say, "Oh yeah, we're doing like Force superpower here. Quick, Obi-Wan, activate the Force Speed Force."
But that's what it was supposed to be, pretty much.
I mean, as I said, they never address it, and it never comes up again, apart from that one sequence that I'd almost say it was just that I could say it was just like a visual error with the CG for that.
I don't think that's what it was, and it was still there though. It still happened.
Because I think I know what you're talking about. It's in Episode 1 where they just kind of. Like the 2 great
literally just like they like G-Mon slide across the plane. It was so funny.
Which, as I said, they never comment on, and nothing like that's ever attempted again.
Then again, that happens a couple times in those movies for some reason.
Oops, sorry.
No,
don't worry, I'm still here. It was nothing.
But
oops.
But that's like the only issue I had with the prequels in terms of what they, because personally I personally saw it as the Force doing more ridiculous things. But you are right, if they wrote that, I would give it that but they never really did. But that's also the issue with it being a prequel, and they didn't really.
I guess maybe the worst one is Palpatine like throws those Senate chamber things, but he's only throwing them one at a time. So it's not like hurling every single one. It's like picks up one, throws it, which, you know, Yoda lifted an X-Wing without seemingly too much trouble.
I think you should mute your phone.
Yeah, I will. Sorry.
Yeah, to be fair, he did lift it, but he didn't, like, then start throwing it around.
But he didn't need to. Like, he wasn't in the fight, he was just showing, hey, look
actually, to be fair, the only time I can think of where they showed, like, throwing a fucking, X-Wing or something with the Force is, like, that fucking, what game was that again?
Force Unleashed.
Yeah, but I don't know if we can even count that.
I mean, that's just that's a video game, so it's not written, and it was, you know, not like, it's not even canon anymore, probably. But all I'm getting at is
that's what I'm saying. I'm not gonna count that.
But all I'm getting at is that Yoda could lift the X-Wing without too much physical or too much strain or stress in Empire. So like, it doesn't feel like any of the feats that they did in the original prequel trilogy were like that fundamentally different, and they felt fairly justified just because, like, oh yeah, this is people who are at the height of training and understanding whatever.
I mean, again, I get that, but there's nothing there in the story that tells you that, other than you just deciding that. You're right, like, it's a good idea, but they didn't really themselves capitalize on that.
But all I'm getting at is it still feels like a world of difference between Rey but she just can, though.
Oh no, it's more ridiculous in those movies. It's way more ridiculous, especially more so even in the fucking sequel of that, where Leia becomes Space Jesus.
I mean,
starts flying around in space with Space Jesus powers.
Man, talk about hindsight. They backed the one character who they backed to, like, make it to at least the ninth film
is the one who unfortunately passed away.
Whoops.
And all they did was throw Luke under a bus for no reason.
No, not for no reason. It's because it subverted your expectations.
Oh.
It doesn't matter if there's any quality. It's just a matter of whether people saw it coming. And it's like, hey, I saw it coming because I saw that we were just going to get Hoth. We were just going to get Hoth again, and then we got Hoth again. Except this time it's on a salt planet instead because they were fucking smirking to the camera when they went, "It's salt," and it's like, fuck you.
It feels like what happened was, like, one of the actors said, was like, isn't this just Hoth? And then there's like, it's salt, fuck you.
You're giving way too much credit for Rian Johnson not to be a colossal fuckface, and he wasn't literally just going, yeah, everyone is just going to say that this is Hoth, so I'll just rub it in their fucking faces. You're doing that thing where, like, you just assume people aren't scum. It's like people, like, I had a discussion earlier where someone was like, oh, maybe, like, the Fallout 76 team were just super rushed, and it's like, yeah, I guess they were really rushed to, like, press that copy-paste button.
That game is just a pile of shit. But no, you're right. Best case, an actor brought it up, and then he decided to be a dick. Most likely case is pretty much what you just said.
What's worse is that in that same scene, Gareth Edwards is cameoing. And I only say this because Gareth Edwards is in the unfortunate position of having made the best of the Disney Star Wars movies now.
Wait, which one did he do?
Rogue One.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Because Rogue One isn't crippled by anything else. Like, it's not crippled by, like, Solo having to be shot twice and also a clusterfuck. And it wasn't crippled by The Last Jedi, and, you know, The Force Awakens got hindered by the fact that The Last Jedi came out and went, wait, so none of these questions mean anything, so this is all pointless.
Right.
Which, not necessarily the fault of the movie, but that's the problem. That's the problem when you make things intentionally as trilogies.
Yeah. I don't really think there's anything else I could say about Star Wars. We have everything done.
Star Wars is dead. I mean, we could talk about Detroit like you wanted, but I kind of feel the same about Detroit.
I mean, there's not really else to put on it. And then, like, in terms of, like, the other Star Wars stuff, like, I like the cartoons, and that's pretty much it.
We'll just repeat.
I like the cartoons more than the movies, to be honest.
I mean, that's because they're written by people who don't have who don't have vested interests and/or executives breathing down their neck. I mean, Last Jedi didn't have that, but that was by a guy who had a vested interest in that he hated Star Wars and wanted to kill it.
Kind of like the guy who did the CGI, was it Beowulf movie, like, back in, like, 2000 something?
I mean, I don't know how you can hate the Beowulf the poem. It's not like it's relevant. I know the person...
Apparently he did! That's why that movie is such shit!
I know the guy who did the Blair Witch, the sequel to Blair Witch, hated the
But it's not me, that's not me just, like, you know, just bullshitting. He's, like, said in, like, interviews, like, yeah, this isn't gonna be like that Beowulf. You know, that crappy Beowulf.
It reminds me of, you remember Dante's Inferno, the video game?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, you just kind of question why that exists.
Yeah.
It's like, when it came out, there was a huge push for it, because they had, like, a tie-in...
I remember that.
They had, like, a huge tie-in animated movie for it. Well...
I remember, like, going into, like, the game store, and they're just being, like, shit all over for that fucking game.
There's, like,
I had, like, no interest.
And I just kind of question as to why that game got as much like hype build up as it did. Like, did EA really think, oh yeah, sure, this'll like take down God of War? Because it's clearly what they're trying to like steal from.
Oh yeah. Because that was because a lot of games were trying back then to steal from God of War.
Because that's when God of War 3...
There was like that. There was Heavenly Blade. There was a couple other ones.
Because that was like back when God of War 3 had like already come out, and everyone was like, well, God of War is done. Haha. Oops. I mean, I guess hindsight, right?
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, that was the era, because God of War in general, there was a lot of people trying to copy all of them and try to take them down. But that's an issue with the AAA industry, where they're just like, let's just copy the other guy, and then...
And it's like setting a game, hell, whatever, that's all fine. But, like, why base it off of Dante's Inferno? Like...
Because they couldn't think of a story.
Like, Devil May Cry is based off of Dante's Inferno, but it's not as overt about it.
Yeah. Oh, well, the thing is, I think what they were trying to do was, they're like, oh, God of War is based off of Greek mythology. What do we have? Let's not do Greek, okay. Let's not do Norse. What do we do? Christianity? Hell, Dante's Inferno.
I mean, even if you base it on Christianity, there's like a bunch of other shit you could do.
Oh yeah, there's other shit you could do.
I mean, Christian mythology is kind of boring. It's basically just God as a colossal fuckwit.
God was upset that the other mythologies had more interesting shit, so he flooded the planet.
I mean, you could basically just boil down to every Old Testament story as God got a little bit pissy. And everyone else suffered.
Not wrong.
Until you reach the New Testament, where it's like, and then he was never seen again.
And then he had a kid and calmed his fucking tits.
I mean, at least...
Or he was the kid, or was he? Depending on which one you're reading.
Oh no, man. It's all Greek to me.
I get it.
Yes. But yeah, it just kind of struck me Dante's Inferno was such a baffling experience for how much it was pushed, and then how quickly it dropped off. It wasn't even like it was a terrible game, it was just...
Yeah.
Completely forgettable, which I guess I accused Detroit of having that exact same problem. Which is Did
Dante's Inferno also win a bunch of awards back in the day, too?
I don't think so.
Okay, so at least it didn't have that.
I think Dante's Inferno... I mean, Detroit didn't really win a bunch of awards.
It won a number. I know that.
Every game can win an award these days. Literally, just take any game...
That's not true. Iconoclast didn't win a fucking thing.
Just take any game and then, like, say, yeah, but the main character is trans, and you will get, like, 50 awards, I guarantee.
Or you can also do the opposite, where... Actually, there aren't a lot of trans characters I can think of in video games.
Exactly.
But you can also do the opposite, where if you placate to the other crowd, you can win shit.
Like, there's so many easy ways to make a award-winning game, and I've sort of said in chat, but I'll repeat it here for the sake of consistency. Detroit is not an intrinsically bad game, but it's so shallow being what it's about.
Actually, no. There's literally only one transgender character I can think of that is confirmed transgender, and that's Poison.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to remember Poison.
Because other than that, I think there was one, and I didn't play the game, but I believe it was Pillars of Eternity, because I remember people were pissy about that. But it was like something that was just in their bio to just mention that they were. I can't remember the whole thing, but I just remember that they were born a different gender, and that was about it.
But what I'm getting at is...
And people were pissy about that, saying that somehow breaks lore. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
But what I'm just getting at is that the problem with Detroit
Oh,
is...
wait, there was one other one. This one was poorly written, though. What was it? Mass Effect Andromeda.
Oh, did that have a trans character?
Yeah, where pretty much you say hi to them, and then they start going through their whole spiel about it, and I'm like, listen, transgender people don't, like, come out like that, too, especially with, like, a lot of the shit, or, like, how some of them get fucking attacked.
It is, like...
They're not gonna do that. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
It is the future, though.
That is true.
So, like,
but
sensibility
it just
could
doesn't.
be different.
That is true, but like the way it was written didn't feel like that.
Of course, Mass Effect is no stranger to having characters who are intolerant.
I know there's actually a thing. I know there's a thing in Alien with Ripley's bio that implies that she was that she's transgender.
It'd be impressive considering she does have. I mean, I guess technology has gone by, but she does have a canon daughter.
To be fair, this is also in the first movie before like all the sequels happened.
Yes, I don't know. I can't really think of any bio like that, but
it was like in the background. I remember seeing something on it, and I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting.
I'd have to have a look at it, but it's Ridley Scott, and I don't trust him because he's a senile old man.
That is true.
And has been for a great many years.
Oh no, it was a shot from the movie. It wasn't from his mouth.
I feel like that would be far. I feel like with Alien specifically, that would be a far more well-known fact.
I don't know. Most people still don't know that it's the Wachowski sisters these days.
2 seconds, sorry.
Okay, I'll wait till you come back before I make the crack I was gonna. Once he's back to life.
I'm back. Sorry. It's just.
So what I was gonna make a joke of, what I was gonna add to the Wachowski sister thing is like, which is hilarious because of all the people that use the red pill term that are anti-transgender.
Oh yeah. Let's go back to the original point. Detroit is extremely is like nothing offensively wrong with it apart from it just being extremely shallow. Like it's. I mean, it's an android thing that's about slavery. Like.
Yeah, I had someone like yell at me when I was saying that like it's just nothing and it's just boring. It's just a bad David Cage game where they were telling me how it's a masterpiece.
But it isn't, because it relies so heavily on so many other like pieces of fiction and work that
even on its own, it's not really well done.
But like, there's literally you can just find the fucking labyrinth thing from Westworld, and I don't even think Westworld's particularly good, or at least it started off good and then it went to shit. Well, like. As I said, it makes it so that everything else, because you just always see shit like Ghost in the Shell references in these things, or, you know, Blade Runner is another popular one to reference, fall back on. But the problem
like,
is...
there are just better written stories of the robot with a soul. There are just so many better ones. It's not. This is like one of the weaker ones.
And it has nothing more beyond that base concept.
It's even weaker than Fallout 4, and Fallout 4's writing is very bad.
That's the difference, is that it has nothing beyond this initial concept. So the whole question is, do machines have souls? It's like, well, within the first like 5 minutes, you've already answered that question. So now what? Now you're basically just saying no, but it's like it's the civil rights movement, but with robots. And you know it's the civil rights movement because they have shit like the androids sing fucking slave songs.
Right. Actually, the synth. In Fallout 4, the synth robots have souls thing doesn't. You don't really get to learn that unless you go down a certain branch in the story too.
Yeah, but it does require playing Fallout 4, and that's
Yeah, that's true.
That makes
that
already makes you a slave.
That's true.
Makes you.
But I was just more or less like pointing out how even they did it better, and that story isn't very well done.
But there's so many other pieces of fiction have done this exact story,
right?
Like done it far
and it's
better.
not like and it's not like Nier, where Nier did something unique with the idea.
And so you then because like everything, and because it relies so heavily on you having seen shit like this, it's like, okay, so take Deus Ex Human Revolution for instance, because that, while not the same, has a similar enough like
with the augments.
General kind of transhumanism thing, and how a lot of that, there's like little cheeky nods to other franchises, but they're not like super reliant on those sort of general concepts and ideas. Like, they make nods to like RoboCop, but it's not as if like they are repeating arguments made within RoboCop.
Yeah, literally what they do in RoboCop, they make a gag where you read up a thing and it's like, wait, Jensen is similar to RoboCop. It's kind of funny.
It's more egregious than that. You go into the police station and you can find the office of Officer Alex Murphy. And in
there is Alex Murphy.
Yeah, and in there's the two guys who are saying, "Oh, I saw this old movie about a cop in about a robotic cop in Detroit," and then they just look at the player. I mean, it's still nowhere near as bad as like Evil Within, or the second one where they literally just look at the camera and go, "There's evil within too." And it's like, man, Shinji Mikami, you have fallen. I fucking hate Evil Within so much.
I haven't played it, so
I played the first one, and it was enough to make me think, yeah, this game is garbage.
I can't remember. Did Mikami do 4?
Yes.
He did Resident Evil 4? Okay, yeah, that explains a lot. Though, to be fair, at least 4 is funny. Though 4 is also the cause of all the things that people bitched about for years.
The problem with Evil Within is it has no real idea what it's meant to be doing. So, okay, so it's like, does this whole thing of, oh, well, there's limited resources because it wants to build survival horror and create these, like, tense atmospheres, right? You know, the whole thing of, you have to make these conscious decisions. Do you, like, shoot the enemy, shoot the bad guy in the face now, and, like, get away easy, or do you shoot them, or do you save your bullets for the inevitable, like, big badass fucker that's going to come at you in a few minutes?
So kind of like how, like, Resident Evil Revelations 2 is.
Yeah, except there's no actual choice. You have to, every fight is basically mandatory because there's no real stealth mechanic. Like, they have stealth mechanics, but there's no actual way to take advantage of them with the environments. There's no like non-ammo consuming way to fight enemies either. So there's no melee, there's no like knife. No matter how shit the knife is, it's still an option to use it.
So it's not like, say, in like Revelations 2 where there's options to stun, there's ways to slip around by hiding behind things.
Yes, there's no way to like bypass enemies that isn't just fight them. Which then means that you then spend the entire game scrabbling for ammo.
At that point, it's not even a horror survival game. It's just an action game.
It's just an action
really
game.
Hard action game.
An action game with some minimal resources, which then so it's like if you cannot do anything else, why bother? Like there's like 2 sections I think you can actually make use of stealth mechanics. Everything else
it's like Resident Evil 4, but with
RE4 doesn't have stealth mechanics at least. Like,
and with basically it's RE4 with better atmosphere, I guess.
But RE4 at least has like plentiful resources. So it's it's more action orientated, but the game is designed to accompany that fact.
Yeah, with like enemies just randomly dropping ammo and shit.
You're fighting against enemies, but you're always like on the back foot with ammo and resources, which doesn't make it scary. It makes it frustrating when you go up into a boss and you have no ammo, no way to replenish ammo, so you have to restart the level in order to try and be more efficient enough to know what's coming.
Gotcha.
So it's frustrating, and it leans too heavily on its idea of you're in the mind of a madman, and it pulls like the same tricks too many times that you just become used to them.
Yeah. Actually, similar to Resident Evil 4, where it's like, and then the chainsaw guy shows up again. Okay. Now there's 2 of them, and they're women. All right.
But RE4 does have variations amongst that, though. So yeah, the Dr. Salvador and his like companions are like running thing, but they're not like as frequently together as like and then you turn a corner, and then suddenly it's a different place, or you open a door and you felt gravity's all fucked up now, which is like basically every time.
Okay.
It's like there's proper spacing out, and there's new enemies and concepts introduced like throughout RE4, so there's like new variety.
I wouldn't say that, but
new
it
environments.
Evil Within.
There's new
environments. You're mostly in the fucking castle, and then you go after you're in the castle. You go to the it's the village, then the castle, then the '80s action movie battleground scene.
There's the research base as well.
That's the '80s action. That's the '80s action area.
But there's still like
because you start off in you end up in the research, and then it is part of the '80s action movie set piece.
But all I'm getting at is the Evil Within just has like fundamental problems with its own like design.
Right.
Whereas like RE4, you can like at the very least.
RE4's biggest issue is just more of it can't pick a tone.
Yeah.
It'll be silly, and then it'll try to be scary. but it doesn't know how to toe the line with that. It's never really that scary, so it's kind of like, but like it wants you to think it's a horror game, but it's not. It's never quite picks what it wants to do. The English version benefits though from the English script making a lot more jokes, where it becomes almost like a B movie or like one of those asylum films.
Is there actually a different dub in Japanese for RE4?
The script in RE4 in Japan is a lot drier. Leon doesn't make a lot of snarky remarks. That's actually why Leon in every other game isn't really a snarky asshole.
I wasn't sure because a lot of specifically Capcom games of that era didn't actually have just had English dubs and no Japanese ones. Devil May Cry I know is probably the most famous one because it wasn't until like they actually did that anime.
The Resident Evil ones did, because there's like Japanese voices for like the remakes of Resident Evil and all that stuff too.
Well, because I know for a fact like Dante didn't have a Japanese voice actor until like they made the anime, which was like after 3 had come out.
Right.
I know Bayonetta didn't have I know this is Platinum, but Bayonetta didn't have a Japanese voice actress until they did that movie.
Yeah.
Which was, a thing.
I keep forgetting that was the thing.
Well, you should. It was completely forgettable.
Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that they weren't making Devil May Cry at the time, I'd find Bayonetta kind of forgettable. If I'm gonna be completely honest about Bayo. The combat in Bayo never really felt that great. It always felt like I was just tickling people until they died.
It's because there's a mechanic that the game doesn't actually explain, which allows you to dodge and hold your combos while dodge, so you can instantly go back into your combos. And as I said, this is a problem with the game.
Oh no, I know that, but like, it always felt like the hits were tickles until they die.
I thought the hits were fairly solid.
I don't know.
You throw your sword, they take like third of the health bar off, and it seems
probably later in the game maybe it would have felt better, but I lost interest pretty quick. But
sure,
I don't know.
Star Wars sucks.
I mean, yeah, Star Wars does suck.
Don't watch episode 9, folks. Don't watch Avatar 2, 3, or whatever we're going to be on.
Oh yeah, I forgot. They're still making Avatar 2, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
I keep forgetting that they're still making that. I guess James Cameron's waiting until they have a new CGI thing to be like, ooh, look at this, so people will actually watch his Fern Gully movie.
No, it's just they've been making the next 4 Avatar movies back to back.
Oh.
So it's not like, it's been just taken this long for them to put Avatar 2 together. It's because they've been doing Avatar 2 and 3 and 4 or something as well.
Try to milk as much money out of it before it dies.
2. So 2 comes out this year. 2 comes out around December when episode 9 comes out.
Huh.
Yeah, have fun with think of that.
I thought it was fuck you, it's January, not fuck you, it's December. What is
no,
it?
It's fuck you, it's year now.
Oh, okay.
Remember, they changed it.
Oh,
I actually was thinking about it. 2018 was such a garbage year for films.
Spider-Verse was good.
Yeah, and you had Infinity War. You know what else you had in 2018? Solo, a Star Wars story.
Yep.
The Predator.
Every time I go by my work's Redbox and I see the Predator, I just kind of like twitch.
So yeah, you had the Predator. Wasn't there a recent? You had Venom, which the best I've ever heard is Venom is entertaining, not good.
That's usually what I hear.
Black Panther.
I know. Actually, you want to laugh. So. You know how we've mentioned many times how, like, the Marvel MC Universe version of Peter is just not Peter?
The shit, yes.
Yeah, I was trying to explain that to a coworker of mine. By the way, this coworker apparently also likes the Venom movie. But,
I've heard there's entertainment value, but I've not seen
he doesn't understand how, having Tony Stark do all this, other than the suit he'll agree with, takes away from Peter's character.
Because it turns a guy who's entire shtick is that he's a solo act who's super responsible into the young ward of Tony Stark, who is, would be fine if he wasn't so prevalent.
Like, you could have changed that version of Spider-Man's name into anything other than Peter, and it wouldn't have mattered.
He is straight up just more like Miles Morales than he was Peter Parker.
You're right, he is more like Miles. But, like, even then, I don't even think he's quite like Miles either.
He isn't, but it would have been better if he'd have been called Miles, because then there is at least more grounding for the way he's been written.
That's true.
If he was Miles, then a young superhero doesn't know what he's doing, so he needs coaching. Yeah, that is kind of Miles.
And that's one of the things that's fun about Spider-Verse, because you get, like, an older Peter, which we haven't had an older Peter in fucking ever, man. I don't know what it is, but they just keep doing young Peter. I like older Peter.
Because the movies went teenage Peter Parker. It's because, like I said before, everyone has their like idea of their perfect vision of what a character is, but it's based on what that character was when they were a kid, right?
Yeah.
So this is why One More Day happened, because as far as Joe Quesada was concerned, the perfect Spider-Man was the Spider-Man he grew up with, which was the young, freewheeling Batch who just does his own thing and isn't tied down by any kind of real relationship. That's the Spider-Man he grew up with.
I get that, but we grew up with the older one, but I like the older one. So young Spider-Man's fine, but one of the things I like about older Spider-Man is that it makes him different than other superheroes. Well, more different than other superheroes these days, because we have so many teen superheroes now.
Mm-hmm. What I'm getting at is that... But consider... So, the average age of the person who's going to be working on Spider-Man stuff now is around our age, right?
Yeah.
So what elements of Spider-Man did we grow up with, really? Ultimate Spider-Man was like the thing that they kickstarted the whole Ultimate Marvel universe with, which was about teenage young Spider-Man, young Peter Parker. I think it's fair to say a fair amount of people would have read that, because it's,
There's more of a divide, because you have those people, and you have people that grew up with, like, the 90s cartoon.
Yeah, and then you have the Raimi movies, which also which admittedly are...
Or somewhere in the middle.
Which the Raimi movies are somewhere in the middle, because they start off with young Peter Parker, with his 30-year-old actor playing the teenager.
Because, those are, like, in the middle, because he's out of college and everything. But he's, like, just fresh out of college, has a small apartment. Well, it starts off with him being 15, then it's him out of college.
But what I'm getting at is that when we came out, there were a lot more retellings of Spider-Man starter, which means that for the people who have sort of grown up now and are old enough to be watching, they're like, oh, well, it's new Spider-Man. Of course, he's a teenager.
Also, I was trying to explain that to him, too, that having it come from Tony Stark's mouth, the fucking responsibility line, rather than his uncle, is kind of fucked, because they're just turning... Because we know Tony's gonna die, so they're turning him into Uncle Ben. Because I was telling him, it's like, well, do you really want to watch them kill Uncle Ben again? I'm like, no, I don't mind them skipping that, but they're still taking it away from that character, and thus taking it away from Peter, too. And then they're just turning Stark into their fucking Uncle Ben, so it doesn't even matter.
Mm-hmm. It's basically replacing what is a huge, vital part of Spider-Man's development and his character. It's been a staple since the very beginning, since the fucking 60s. And replacing it for no reason other than because, well, Iron Man is super popular. We want to keep him relevant for as long as we can. It feels disingenuous. It's not the Spider-Man we know. It doesn't even feel like... And it's not
Spider-Man.
It's not like we're against like the idea of an alternate retelling of Spider-Man, because hey, people love Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah.
People love the new video game.
Hell, you'd honestly be better off if you just didn't have an Uncle Ben. Just be like, oh, he's been living with his aunt. Uncle Ben died years ago when he was young, and it's just been him and his aunt.
Or you could just, still have the Uncle Ben, the great power thing, but don't make it the core part of the film, because, the whole thing they explain is that, well, everyone knows this knows the Spider-Man origin story. And it's like, yeah, So everyone, you're not gonna have to tell people. You don't have to have like long drawn out sequences that go, "Here's Uncle Ben. Here's how Peter loved his uncle, and here's his uncle saying the line that he never even really said."
What was it? Like, actually, they use an older movie. It's not Spider-Man, but the original Batman movie. Like, they like quickly did the origin story of like the whole like Kent death thing, and it worked fine in that movie.
They didn't make it the beginning. They didn't like have a whole actual scene devoted exclusively to it. What they did was they made it like a part of the half the mystery was like, Vicky Vale has to like is trying to figure out
who Batman is and everything.
Well, not even just figure out who Batman is. She's also looking into Bruce Wayne, and then like she sees, he's putting flowers down on this random sidewalk, and then that prompts her to look it up. And then explain. So it's like throughout the movie they kind of hint at that, but it's not the overall like it's not the like.
What I mean is like they kind of like quickly do his origin, like they just do it. They do it quick. They do it in a way that's like quick.
Yes.
Since they get the idea that everyone knows the origin, and it works really well.
And then it's just like replacing Uncle Ben with Tony Stark. Aside from the fact that Tony Stark is a shit father figure for Pete, because this is kind of where the Raimi movie gets it right, because they introduce Uncle Ben and he is basically Pete's father. Yeah, and he's called as such. And then they introduce Norman Osborn, who is like, I have so many things in common with Pete. We're both scientists, and I want to help him, and I want to like be his dad. And like the whole reason why near the end of the movie, where it's like, I already have a father, and it's Ben Parker. Because that's the point, is that you can have like they might have all these similarities, but he's not a father. He's not like there for Pete. He's not teaching Pete really the actual valuable lessons about like growing up. As I said, the thing, even though he's called Uncle Ben, he realistically is just his father. He's raised him from as young as he can remember, and he's taught him like the valuable things throughout most of his life at this point. So that's why losing him is so impactful. With Tony Stark, it's a guy who he's met like a handful of times, who has been ridiculously irresponsible and negligent to Pete. He's not his like assistance is unnecessary. It's not being the like formative years. The reason why Peter Parker is a good man is because he had such a positive influence in the form of Uncle Ben. Whereas with Stark, well, it doesn't really feel like that because Stark himself is so flawed. I mean, never forget, he's also a thief because he stole Hank Pym's story.
Yeah.
So it does feel disingenuous that character who is so wildly irresponsible, and that's part of his character, is that he's the irresponsible one because there are more responsible people than him to cover the slack.
No, but they did that hand wave line where he's like, "Don't do anything I wouldn't do, and don't do anything that I would do."
Yes.
See, it works. Now.
He's still the one who's teaching like morality and responsibility to Peter Parker, a character who should not.
Oh no, I'm making fun of.
I know you are
a shaky argument,
and I'm pointing out the inherent flaw of it in case people go, "Well, I don't see the problem with that." It's because it's still a character who's ultimately teaching Pete about responsibility, that for a person who has no need of that. You basically just
actually. What's funny is that if you want to do that, the comics did it better with Peter teaching the Avengers Academy people by telling them the mistakes he has made and using them to teach them.
There are as I said, it's better ways you can go about it than the way the MCU does it, and it's why I just do not care about MCU version of Spider-Man. It's why,
the MCU version of Spider-Man is terrible.
Because he's not Peter Parker, which then just makes me think, well, if he's not Peter Parker, then who is he and why is he wearing his skin? And as I said,
we're going to go a little long because this cutscene's long, but once this cutscene's over, we'll stop.
As I said, I'm fine with alternate takes on Spider-Man. As far as I know, everyone loves Miguel O'Hara.
Yeah.
Miles is okay. Like, I don't really know enough about Miles, all things considered.
Miles alright.
I know his shtick, I know his gimmick, and I've seen a few things from him, and it's like, it's fine. But it kind of falls into a lot of my general thoughts on the extended Spider-Man family, where it's like, why does this exist, really, though? It feels like it kind of devalues the uniqueness of Spider-Man by having so many other Spider people running around. But that's
You know,
just
actually,
me.
I think about it. I'm surprised there's not. I'm surprised there's only 2 Wolverines. If you catch my drift.
Yes.
When you think about it.
3.
Because there's. Oh yeah, you're right. Because the little baby girl.
I was also counting Dakan.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, so we
4.
have 4.
5,
But one's also
5
like
if
a
we
small
count
child.
Lady Deathstrike. Sometimes. But like, so
I more like see her as a female Sabretooth.
Deadpool? Question mark.
Well, Deadpool just has the regeneration thingy in the
Yes.
skeleton.
Not the metal skeleton.
And actually, even X-23 is not even 100% the same because her claws are different.
But I mean, like,
and how she fights is different.
But I mean,
too.
X-23, Descartes, and Dakan are both like.
Actually, yeah, all of them fight differently.
They fight differently, but like they still share a lot of the same things that would go into describing him as as a character of Wolverine, right?
Yeah.
So it's like even though all the different Spider people have like a few differences, a large chunk of what goes into them is still just the Spider-Man, but with black. Like there's not a huge amount of variation, and like it's kind of like why there's so many characters, not just in Marvel even, that are just basically Iron Man.
Yeah, there's a lot of like super suit and with the same weapons,
or same basic elements, and it's like, well, that kind of makes a bit more sense because Iron Man's a lot more generic in that sense. It's like, oh, it's just power armor. Like so many fucking pieces of fiction have Iron Man style.
Hell, the thing that I'm working on has like has a character with power armor, though he doesn't have like an arm cannon or anything.
So it's like all the Iron Man clones make sense, even in universe they make sense. But all the Spider-Man clones just kind of felt like, yeah, these didn't need to be a thing.
A lot of them are also from different universes.
Yeah, but it just still ties into the whole, let's make Spider-Man like the center of the multiverse, and it feels like, but he's just a guy from Queens. Like, I know he's your most popular character. I know he's like one of, if not your still most popular character. I know he's super marketable. I get why they do it. It just feels like kind of... It feels forced, I think.
There are a ton of Spider people.
There are, and there's a lot, and they just keep.
And there's only like a couple that I'm into, to be honest.
But that's my point is that on some level I feel like with the sheer amount of people that are so much like Spider-Man as well as the other thing, in the sense that they stick to walls, they shoot webs, they have more or less the same costumes. And it kind of creates, and as I said, it kind of devalues the elements that make Spider-Man stand out, which is that he's such a unique power set. But that's just me.
That's like an issue in comic books in general.
Yeah, I mean, just making it's this character, but they are blank, is generally a problem. It's why there's so many like fucking Kryptonians running around.
4. No, 5.
Which does make the whole Last Son of Krypton thing seem a bit egregious.
Yeah, Last Son of Krypton's just kind of hilarious at this point.
As long as you ignore all those other Sons of Krypton still around.
I mean, if we're gonna be pedantic, one of them's a clone, so there's only 2,
but still.
That's if we're being pedantic.
And that's also not counting.
A lot of daughters of Krypton.
And of course, Zod.
Well, yeah, that's why I said 2 sons, because if you count Clark and him.
Oh, no. But like,
and that was me being. I was saying that if I was being pedantic and not counting Superboy because clone.
Like, there's so many other. There's like multiple other Kryptonians, which kind of does devalue Clark's whole like Last Son of Krypton thing. What makes it alive?
Yeah.
Like.
Oh, interesting. Interesting side thing with Superman. I was happy to see this. Gail Simone absolutely hates. Let's make Superman a villain stories.
Good. Gail Simone's always struck me as a reasonable individual.
Yeah.
I don't think she hated freedom. I guess I'm glad to see that she doesn't.
Yeah, it's good to see, considering a lot of times they like to give Superman to people who just absolutely hate the concept of the character and just want to make him a dick.
Or it's people who just flat out have never read a Superman book in their life and have no understanding of the character beyond the meme.
That's usually what it is.
Oh yeah, I know about Superman. I've seen the Richard Donner movie.
Oh yeah, he's super powerful and that's it. But what if we made him evil? Isn't that interesting? If we made a super powerful guy evil, that's very interesting.
That's very interesting. You're very interesting. But like, as I said, that kind of devalues things. The amount of fucking speedsters running around devalues the Flash.
Yeah, even though the best one is Barry.
No, the best one is Wally.
Wally, you're right. Wally's the best one. Sorry.
I
don't know why I got them.
Barry is the half-assed
Barry's the boring one.
imitation of Wally now.
You're right.
Which is fucking hilarious to consider.
To be fair, also Wally's the one we grew up with because he was the one in fucking Justice League and shit. But he's still more interesting.
But like, even a large chunk of like the most notable Flash storylines were written with Wally, like fucking Zoom, which was a great storyline, all things considered. And I'm glad that the CW show completely ruined it because they just made him another speedster. I always really liked that Zoom was like a speedster, but not really, because his whole thing is that he just slows down the flow of time.
Right.
So it looks like he's running fast, but he's actually not, which is interesting because it means a large number of the Speed Force powers don't actually apply to him. So like he can't do shit like phase through walls, but it means he has other applications of his powers. So it was like, oh, they're the same, but not like just the same.
Oh no, I get that. Yeah, no, that is. I'm just gonna wrap it up here because the cutscene finally ended.
Right.
Or at least I got to the save point at the end of the chapter. But yeah, I don't think there was anything else. There was a couple other things I probably want to talk about comics, but it's late now at this point.
Save it for next week.
Yeah, we can always do that. But yeah. So I guess the last thing is I'm just glad Gail Simone doesn't want Superman to be a dick because that's just boring. And honestly, let her write Superman, please. Please let her write Superman at some point. I need some good Superman stories for the love of God. Have a good day, everybody.
Or we could just kill the past. That also works.
God damn it.